Welcome to the Front Street Animal Shelter, located in the heart of downtown Sacramento, California. Every year, over 11,000 animals come through these doors. Dedicated staff and volunteers work hard to provide quality care to these animals. Each and every one has a unique story to tell, and there's always so much to learn. We'd like to explore and share some of the real-life experiences of both the animals and the humans that can be found here in A Shelter Life. Hi, and welcome to Shelter Life. I'm Don Henkel. On tonight's episode, we're going to be highlighting the fantastic off-site adoption program that Front Street does. My guest tonight is Sherry Crum, the Outreach Coordinator, and Linda Oliver, a wonderful volunteer at Front Street. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to give a little perspective, because a lot of people might not know exactly what an off-site adoption is, just so for all of you out there, it's basically when they take adoptable animals from Front Street, whether dogs or cats, and they take it off the property of the shelter into different public arenas. And we're going to talk about that tonight because that really has helped catapult the adoption rate for Front Street. So Sherry, how long has the off-site program really been going on?
So the off-site program's been going on for about 2 years now. We hit our 2-year mark this February.
And as a general rule, do we usually go to the same locations? Do we switch it up a little bit?
We definitely switch it up a little bit. We have our store locations that we go to. We have, you've heard of Wedding Crashers. We have Front Street Crashers. So you never know where we'll end up. We go to like art exhibits and have them there. We go to parks and different areas.
As the coordinator for the offsites, how important do you think it is to actually get these animals away from the shelter environment?
Oh, it's very important because that way the dogs blossom when they're out there. In this shelter environment, you know, they only have their kennels or they get walked and everything, but they really truly blossom when they're out at offsite.
Okay. So when you're thinking about offsites, do people come to you, or, because you told me you basically have the whole year booked really for
Right.
the weekends, right? So is that something that you actively pursue, or do people kind of come back and say, we really want to do this again?
Well, we have a lot of people that want to do it all the time. If they could have us there all week long, that would happen. But I basically book it out the whole year. I have some flex dates in case something comes up, and I'm always switching my calendar around. So,
Yeah.
But yeah.
So how about, without playing any favoritism whatsoever, who are some of the big places that we go to consistently?
Well, some of the big stores would be like the Petco's, definitely, PetSmart, Incredible Pets, Pet Department Store, and Unleashed by Petco's.
Okay. So I know that you're kind of known for doing a little bit different off-site events.
Right.
So I think there was one that I went to, and that was actually at a pub.
Yes. Uh-huh.
How do you come up with these ideas?
You know, it's anywhere people are, and that's what's interesting about it is we show up with our animals, and when you least expect it, and people are really into it. They're coming up and meeting the animals, and ending up walking away with one of them. So they go in for a beer and go out with the dog. You know.
I mean, the concept is just kind of like, what are you thinking? But in actuality, after seeing one myself, I was like, what a really good idea.
Right.
Because it is taking them away from the shelter environment and getting them to a place where they can actually be themselves, or as we like to say, be dogs, right? And not have to worry about the kennel mate next to them or something like that. So when you're thinking about doing an offsite, obviously there's a process that you go through.
Correct.
And we've got some footage of exactly what you're doing on the mornings before you leave. So we're going to take just a few minutes and see some of the footage of what Sherry actually does in preparation to do an offsite for the Front Street Animal Shelter. So let's have a look.
The process I use is I'm familiar with the dogs because I visit with them often, almost every day. I go by the notes that the volunteers leave me on the cards. I go by feedback that the playgroups give me. I go by if we've taken them to offsite before, and one of the questions I use is, would you want this dog next door to you? Would you adopt this dog to your sister? And also, we have a lot of public dogs that come in, a lot of families. So you want to make sure that they're good with children, good with other dogs, and that type of thing. So what I bring is I have 3 copies of our kennel cards, and everybody that's going today. So if the office has 1 copy, each of the volunteers will have a copy, and then we'll have a master copy.
Okay.
Also, we go through and have all the dogs have a collar with ID on them. We have extra leashes, a Doppy vest, and then we have extra crates just in case somebody needs a timeout. We have our table. We have extra crates. My wagon that has vests. My pool cart that has all the office type items. We have our canopy today for when we do offsite adoptions outdoors. And then we have some extra blankets in case somebody needs to lay down there, chairs, that type of thing.
So you really take a personal interest when you're selecting these dogs for the offsite.
I do.
And I really keyed in on the one thing that you said specifically was, would you want this dog to be your neighbor? I mean, it's common sense to say that, but I don't think people think of it that way.
Right.
And sometimes it's got to tug at your heartstrings, right? I mean, there's all those dogs at the shelter who really all need to have a chance to go out of the shelter into a more friendly, stress-free environment. How do you really pick those guys? I mean, is it based on what you said in that little clip about, you know, temperaments and everything else? And the one thing that I think we should talk about is your success with not only the shelter dogs, but the fosters.
Right.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the foster aspect and how important that is to those offsites?
Right. It's really important because it's a venue for the fosters to get out into the public. And it's really nice. It gives a chance for the public that wouldn't normally walk into a shelter to meet an animal, an opportunity to meet a foster that may be potty trained already, have some basic obedience down. It's lived with cats or it's lived with children, so it gives more of an opportunity to know more about the animal.
So Linda, you've been a volunteer at Front Street for how long?
Since July of 2014.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So you're going to be 1 year this July, right?
Yes, yeah.
So obviously you've gone through the basic shelter chores and you've
Yes.
done all that. You've gone through the dog handling classes.
Right.
And now your passion seems to really be doing the offsites, which
Absolutely.
is great. So how do you as a volunteer prepare for an offsite with Sherry? I mean,
Well, there's a couple different ways. Sherry will tell me what dog she wants me to take.
Okay.
So if it's a shelter dog, you know, she has that dog picked out for me already. So I'll go and I'll pick out the dog, you know, from the kennel and take it with me, or we'll go in the the van together.
Right.
Or if I take a foster dog, I'll meet the foster usually at the event where we're going, and I'll show the foster dog there. Sometimes, if I have a foster, I'll
Right.
take my foster.
so you foster animals as well.
Yes,
Isn't that funny how so many volunteers at Front Street are fosters as well?
it just works out that way.
So when you've got a foster dog, like in some of the footage coming up, you were definitely working with somebody's foster
Yes, I
dog
was.
in the footage that we have. How do you learn about that animal? I mean, because you seem like a very natural person at these offsites. And I know somebody says, whatever dog Linda takes, it always gets adopted. right? Which I think is great. But there's obviously some compassion and there's a sincerity with what you're doing. But how do you kind of relay that dog history or story to the new people or the prospective parents?
What I do is I talk to the foster, or I communicate with the foster beforehand and get as much knowledge as I can about the dog beforehand. Because when a potential adopter will come up, or just anybody coming up at an offsite, and they ask about the dog, they want to know the dog's story. And unfortunately, because we're at a shelter environment, we don't know the dog's story.
Right.
You know, these dogs come in, you know, as a stray, or someone brings them in. So we don't have much of a story to tell. So you find out as much as you can to tell the potential adopter. It's, you know, we've had this dog this long. This dog is, you know, likes to sleep on the bed. This dog, you know, is getting potty trained. This dog likes cats. This dog doesn't like cats. As much as you can find out.
Personal touch, right?
Every personal touch you can. Because everybody likes a story.
Right.
You know, and every little dog does have a story.
Oh.
Big dog, little dog, they all do. Even if you've had it for a week, you have a story.
So I know that you've been doing the offsites for a little while now, right?
Since October.
So tell me about the first offsite you did and your dog was adopted. Because I've seen a picture and you're quite beaming with pride.
Oh, yeah.
What was that feeling like?
It was little Min Pin.
Yeah.
And it was a foster. Yeah. And the family came up, and they it was their first dog that they were getting for their family, and the feeling was absolutely incredible. I cried, and I still cry.
Yeah.
Sherry. Because to get a homeless dog a home is the best feeling. It's one of the best feelings I've ever had.
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So, Sherry, is that what a lot of them do when they're especially showing maybe a foster animal? Do they take the extra time to really have that story to tell?
They really do. In fact, I've decided I'm going to start carrying along a box of Kleenex because of this. Yeah, it's really true. It really pulls at the heartstrings. It's really gratifying to see, you know, two families come together like that. You know, you nurture this animal, whether it's through volunteering or through fostering. You really nurture that animal, and to be able to see that adoption take place.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how many are on your team? Do you have a pretty big team for offsites?
I really don't. I have a great smaller team. I would like to grow it.
Right.
I would say on the average, we went from about 4 dogs to about 9 to 10 dogs in an event. So it's getting larger. So I would say roughly about, 9 people.
So do the fosters sometimes bring their own dogs and show them, or do they oftentimes hand them off to like volunteers like Linda?
You know, it's starting to change a little bit because our foster team is growing. So some of them are working, so we'll hand them off to the dog trainers or another foster that's been trained.
Right.
So it's evolving.
So about 2 years the program's been going. Obviously, it's very successful.
Yes.
Do you have any numbers that you'd like to share with us?
I do. I'm so excited.
Okay.
I would love to tell you that we have in 2014 over 256 dogs adopted.
From offsites alone?
From offsites alone. And I'm really happy to tell you this evening that this month to date, we have over 25 dogs that have been adopted this month alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
You know, everybody talks about the Front Street Pride, right? And everybody talks about the teamwork of Front Street, but obviously offsites could not happen without the collaboration of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of the people that make your job easier?
You know, everybody makes my job easier. I mean, from the ACTs to the volunteers to the fosters. This would not be possible without them.
Right.
Would not be possible without them.
So a lot of times we'll know that where your offsites are going to be because it's posted on Facebook.
Right.
How vital has Facebook been for these offsites?
It's been quite amazing because we try to put as many pictures up there of the animals that are coming. So